Hello, everybody, and welcome to Noel the Red Devil. We are here to talk about Erik Ten Hag's press conference versus Arsenal, and he had some interesting things to say about Harry Maguire, Mason Greenwood, Onana, and talking about the pre-season tour and how, to him, these games are not friendlies. But let's get into it. So he was asked during the press conference, actually just at the end of the press conference, about Mason Greenwood. Now, as you all know, Mason Greenwood is a he's a player that divides a lot of United fans. Obviously, for anybody that's been living under a rock, some video footage and photographs emerged of Mason Greenwood's girlfriend that shed light on Mason Greenwood's character. But after a lengthy investigation, the police obviously brought no criminal charges. But there's a lot in their fandom who believe that Mason Greenwood should be ushered out of the club, while there are others out there who also support the Qatari bid for Manchester United, who are also complaining, who I think are all a bunch of hypocrites. To be quite honest, if you're going to be complaining about Mason Greenwood, then why would you be in favour of a Qatari takeover when they, we know that they have issues in Qatar. So I won't get into it because we don't want to get too political on here, but we know the issues. So I think those people are hypocritical. But Erik Ten Hag did say this. He said that he told the club his opinions on the situation, but at the end of the day, it would be left to the club to make the decision on Mason Greenwood's future. He was then pushed. Would you? He's a talented boy. Would you like to see him? And he repeated the same answer. He was very careful the way he was answering his questions on Mason Greenwood, but they didn't dwell too long on it, which was great. They didn't keep it up. But very interesting that it was left at the end of the press conference. But as I said, we didn't want that to become a big issue on pre-season. My sneaky feeling is, if I'm giving my opinion on it, is I do believe that Erik Ten Hag wants him back in the squad. I think that's the only reason why we seem to be just linked to one striker. I do honestly believe that Mason Greenwood will probably be in a United shirt at the start of the season. And I know a lot of fans won't want that, and a lot of fans don't want to hear that, but that is just my gut feeling on it. I don't think Erik Ten Hag actually wants to send him out on loan. I think he knows how talented Mason Greenwood is and knows what he can offer. And I've got a sneaky feeling that the manager wants to keep him. But as he said, he will stand by the club's position on it. But moving on to Harry Kane and the captaincy. So he was asked about Harry Kane, and obviously he was asked about, we know you're not going to tell us about the conversation, but how did the conversation go? He said that he believes that he has a squad full of leaders, and he mentioned that a few times during the press conference. But the most interesting thing he actually said about it is by taking the captaincy off Harry Maguire, he thought that it would benefit him actually, because he says as a central defender, you've got to be communicating, you've got to be given instructions and stuff like that. So by the sounds of things, it sounded to me that Erik Ten Hag was basically saying he was taking the pressure off Harry Kane and then Harry Maguire. And then when he was asked about Bruno being captain, he said, look, I have a lot of leaders in the squad. But he said that was very important. But Bruno obviously is an important element of that. He was also asked about the vice captain. The vice captain hasn't been decided, but again, he did say and made it clear that the squad had a lot of leaders in it, and it's good. It's good to hear that. But you can see that he is changing the mentality of the squad. Slowly but surely is doing that. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. He was also asked about David De Gea and how David De Gea left the club. And very interestingly, he did say if it was up to me, he would get the farewell in front of the fans. So he made it clear, in my opinion, that this wasn't his decision unless he's just throwing the club under the bus, which I don't see him doing, or the people above him under the bus. But he did say that David De Gea did deserve a send-off in front of the Old Trafford crowd. So maybe down the line there is actually going to be a testimonial. He did actually say he was a legend, 540 odd games or whatever it was. He said he is a legend at Manchester United. Then it was a nice little segue into Onana. He was asked about what Onana would bring to the squad. Also, he was asked a couple of interesting questions about about the fact that some goalkeepers have come to United and froze. He was asked, would Onana be able to adapt to the Premier League? And his answer was very interesting. First of all, he did say he believed that Onana would be able to make that transition. He also said that Onana could play in a low defensive block as well as a high defensive block. So he made it clear that the goalkeeper is going to play a very important part. He was also asked about Onana's temperament, about the way he left his clubs and it didn't, and the troubles that Onana has basically had. He said that they did amazing things together, and he has confidence that he will be able to fit in there. But he did make one point, and he stressed it that it was very important to get these players in during pre-season, because obviously you can work on it in pre-season. He was also asked about the striker role, and one person in particular said, are you not disappointed that the club haven't gone out to get Harry Kane or aren't doing all they can to get you a striker? And he says, well, the club know me targets, and the club is working very hard to try get those targets. He was asked then about obviously players leaving the club, and one journalist did say, do you have to sell players to bring players in? And he just basically said, the transfer window is very difficult, but they're doing everything basically in their power to get his targets in. He was also asked if one striker was enough, and that, as I said, makes me believe that maybe Mason Greenwood is going to stay, and I think this manager wants him to stay. Obviously, the club have to make up their mind. But if I'm looking at it, he's bringing in Ramos Højlund, and then you've got Mason Greenwood there. I don't think he wants Mason Greenwood to leave, to be quite honest with you, but it'll be a club decision. And I think that's the reason why we're just bringing in one midfielder. Again, today we've been linked to Goretzka. Doesn't he play for Bayern Munich still? So we've been linked to him now all of a sudden. We were linked to Amrabat as well. So maybe he's bringing in one striker and bringing in two midfielders and keeping Mason Greenwood. That's just my opinion. So I'm just throwing it out there. But very interesting. He was asked about Kobe. He said that he deserved his chance because he's earned it. And he's been impressed by him. And this is why he's in the preseason squad. He was also asked about Rashford. Would Rashford be playing down the middle of the left? Again, I think as United fans, we've already sussed with Erik ten Hag that he likes players that can play in multiple positions and can adapt at any given time to any situation, whether it's got to do with injuries, whether we're down a goal. These players could switch around and adapt. And I think he wants, at least anyway, the wingers to be able to adapt on either side. And especially with Marcus Rashford, he can obviously play down the middle. But I prefer him out on the left. I think that's where he does most of his damage. And if you get that striker in, then Rashford has a target man as well to aim for. And then obviously we got Garnacho coming through. If Rashford needs to be played down the middle, you can play Garnacho over there. We're really overloaded in the wide areas. But some of these young lads that are on tour are going to get a chance, is what I'm taking from those comments. I don't think we'll see many of them tonight play against Arsenal, but we do have Wrexham coming up. Isn't Wrexham tomorrow? I think Wrexham is literally, Wrexham is coming up anyway. So I reckon he'll play the young lads against Wrexham, but expect a decent team tonight against Arsenal. And we will be live at 9:30. The match kicks off at 10. So I'll try to get the team news and all of that ready before we go live. But join me at 9:30. Obviously, it's the US tour, so the games are going to be on in the evening. We will be doing I think the Wrexham game is on at 3:30 in the morning. We will be doing that one as well. We'll be doing the whole of pre-season, and then obviously we will be kicking off with the season as well. And we will be obviously giving our opinions on the press conferences as well during the season. He also, like, as I said, was asked obviously about the takeover. And now that he's in the US, will it give him the opportunity to talk to the owners? And he said that he's been in regular contact with the owners and he's given them his ideas. I will say something. This manager is not afraid to come out and answer the tough questions. But apparently he will get the opportunity to meet them during the US tour. It'll be interesting to see if they tell the manager what the story is. Are they staying? Are they going? And it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of press conferences if Erik ten Hag is pushed on the ownership, and we see what kind of response he gets. Also, he seems to be rather relaxed about the transfer window. I've got to be honest. He doesn't seem like he's frustrated, like you could see with Jose Mourinho when he made it clear he wasn't getting his transfer targets. I think Van Gaal was the same. And David Moyes was screwed over. Let's be honest. I don't think David Moyes was Manchester United level manager, but still, you don't bring him in players to help him. Then he's gonna fail. But yeah, interesting press conference. Obviously, he was asked about the midfield trio of Casemiro, Bruno, and Mason Mount. And he did have some interesting comments to say, which you will find, well, as I said, you will find interesting. Well, hold on. Why is this? There we go. So he said this about the team. Very interesting comments. So he says this. We want to be the best transition team in the world. We want to surprise, play dynamic, speed, aggressive football. That is United. Clear to see what he's building. So he said, we want to be the best transition team in the world. We want to surprise, play dynamic, speed, aggressive football. This is United. And you could tell that he definitely has a game plan. And we've had a few comments as well from the players in relation to Bruno Fernandes being made captain. Rafael Varane said he's not scared to take these decisions and take that responsibility. There's a lot of Man United players that are obviously happy that he is the manager. But someone did, one of the journalists actually, it was funny because just on Bruno become a manager. So when they were obviously talking about Bruno being captain, one of the journalists accidentally said, just on Bruno become a manager. And Erik says, I have been replaced. And then the journalist went back and says, I give you 2 years, right? And Erik Ten Hag says, only 2 years. It was a funny moment in the press conference. But you could see that this manager is totally relaxed. He seems to be enjoying the process. Yeah, I say behind the scenes he is a little bit frustrated that he hasn't gotten in all the players that he wants. But if he can get some of those players in before the end of the pre-season tour and at least get them in and learning his way, then we have a better chance of kicking off this season than we did last season, because we don't want the start that we had last season. Now, we got a tricky game against Wolves in our first game of the Premier League season. So Wolves is not going to be an easy 3 points. So we really need to hit the ground running this season, I believe, if we're going to actually get anywhere near challenging City. And he was actually asked that. And he was asked it a couple of times. One person even brought up his whole comment about eras ending. And he says, one team did okay and the other team not so okay in relation to Liverpool. And, it was, as I said, he seems relaxed. He's in a good place. And I like to see that. But, he was pushed on, could Manchester United challenge for the title? And he says, look, I want to win every game. And as I said, when he was asked about this pre-season tour, he said there is no friendly games. So this manager isn't taking pre-season with a pinch of salt. This manager is serious about pre-season. And I reckon if players don't perform during pre-season, he'll be ruthless. He definitely, listen, it's great to see a manager. Look, Jose Mourinho had a winning mentality, but let's be honest, he was a bit of a prick. This manager has a winning mentality. He has instilled that into the players. You've seen the players that he's improved over last season. I mean, Rashford was nearly out the door. Some people were actually packing Bruno Fernandes's bags. And there was other players as well that people were like, get out of the club. You're not Manchester United quality. And some of them completely turned it around actually, and changed fans' opinions. Now, there's still a couple of players that I believe haven't improved under Ten Hag. The obvious one would be Sancho. Obviously, Martial's injured all the time. I mean, and there's Harry Maguire hasn't improved under Ten Hag either. So, some players have been able to adapt to Ten Hag style and what he demands, and other players are just not up to it. But I do look forward to the game. As I said, we will be here live at 9:30. It's a 10 o'clock kickoff. Arsenal seem to be the home team in this pre-season tour because their name comes up first. So it's basically an away game for us away in the US. And I actually do, listen, I enjoyed last pre-season. We played very well last pre-season, and we've had a decent start to this pre-season. I will say my only concern is that, okay, we have scored, what was it 2-0 against Leeds and 1-0 against Lyon, wasn't it? So we scored 3 goals. But in reality, if you look at the chances that we created, we probably should have had we had 3 now. We should be looking at around 6 or 7 goals right now. But that striker, whoever it is now at this stage, is going to be an important cog, an important piece of the Ten Hag jigsaw. And if we are linked to Goretzka now, and if we're still in for Amrabat, well then there must be players leaving that we don't know about to get the funds in, or unless more funds have been released for the manager that we don't know about. Because I'm being honest, if we get those 2 players, it does make us better. In fairness, we should be going for the likes of Caicedo and, Frankie de Jong and players like that. But right now, we just don't have the budget because this ownership is up in the air. So the manager, again, it's frustrating being a Manchester United fan, because Erik Ten Hag gave us something to cheer last season. Those players gave us something to cheer last season. And it's always the same when a manager comes in, David Moyes being the exception. But when managers come in, they have a decent first season, and there seems to be a little bit of optimism going forward. The second season, the Glazers always screw over our managers. And I just feel that, we actually have the right man in charge. We actually have a world-class manager in the making. I honestly believe he's actually there for what he done to that club last season, from where we were the season before. It's a fucking miracle that we got where we got. You just have to look at it. It was a bloody miracle, with the injuries, with Casemiro being sent off, missing those games, the injuries, the players, it all. Look at our bench of the FA Cup. It was a miracle. Seriously, man. It was a miracle that we got to that final. I think fans kind of need to look at this properly. It was. He worked miracles with that squad. And I just hate the fact that these owners are in charge, because if Erik Ten Hag gets screwed over, even though he loves managing this club, and I could see it, right? He loves it. Be under no illusion, man. If these owners keep pricking around, right, why would he stay? Why would he stay? Why would any manager stay if you're not getting what you are, the tools that you need to compete at the highest level? I just hope they don't. But it'll be, even though it's pre-season, Arsenal games are never friendlies. Remember that, folks. There is a real rivalry there. So it'll be interesting to see, will these players be up for it. Now, if Sancho gets a start, I've watched Sancho, and I've got to say I'm very worried about Jadon Sancho. He faded very quickly, and he fades very quickly in games. Ten Hag tried him through the middle, and for a couple of minutes there, he looked like he had something about him. His pace was actually causing a few problems. But After that, then he just completely faded. You know, if a club comes in for him and we get decent money, I know a lot of fans will be disappointed, but I think we should sell, to be honest. If it means that we can bring in better quality and fill up that bench with better quality players, I'm all for it. It's just sad, but I don't think. Look, I remember before I start doing videos on this channel. I'm in a couple of Facebook Man United groups and stuff like that, and Twitter accounts on Twitter talk about the team and stuff like that. I remember when we were in for Jadon Sancho and how long it took us to eventually get him. But I remember saying that Jadon Sancho was not the right player for us to be going for. The Bundesliga is a completely different kettle of fish. Actually, and I've said this, but you see, Man United fans in this fan base, especially the bigger fan channels and all of these big fan accounts out there on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, they all push a narrative, right? And they all said that Jadon Sancho was world class and all of this. But I challenge you to go back and look at all of those clips of Jadon Sancho when he was playing at Borussia Dortmund, right? And there's one startling difference if you compare the clips to when he plays in the Premier League, right? And the big difference is in the Bundesliga, he had plenty of time on the ball to do his little tricks, to run past players, to nutmeg them. In the Premier League, you're put under pressure from the first whistle, right? He doesn't have time to think. He doesn't have time to pick out his passes, right? In the Premier League, you have to think fast on your feet. And Jadon Sancho, just right now, can't do that. Can he do it? I don't know, because after 2 seasons, and I mean, Erik Ten Hag gave him a break as well. Remember that? To try sort himself out, get himself back to full fitness. You remember, apparently he wasn't fit for some reason. And then he comes back and he had a bit of a spark for a couple of games when he came back, but then he faded. If the manager keeps him, it's a big season for Jadon Sancho, and this is where we go wrong as a club. If a club actually comes in and makes an offer for him, we should be selling right now and just cut our losses, because I don't think he's good enough. And as I said, we could use that Jadon Sancho money to shore up other areas, because we've got loads of talent out on the wings already, right? There's no point to trying to change Jadon Sancho's position and turn him into a central player. I'm sorry, you bought him because he was a winger, because this player was supposed to take around players and stuff like that. He doesn't do that. He loses the ball. He fades. And sometimes it looks like, seriously, within 10, 15 minutes of the game, you look at Jadon Sancho, it looks like he's tired, man. He looks like the energy's being sapped out of him. And it's sad. I don't want to be picking on him because, I didn't think he was the right signing to begin with. But this is Manchester United again, not really doing their homework on Jadon Sancho. Because if the homework was done on Jadon Sancho, they'd say, yeah, he's good in the Bundesliga, but he's not gonna cut it in the Premier League. It's sad. But what can you do? It's up to the manager what he does. But I take the cash for him, and that's just my opinion. And if someone comes in and bids for Harry Maguire, he was talking about how he needs 4 or 5 defenders over the course of the season, which I agree with him with. But I don't think Harry Maguire is going to want to be 5th choice centre-back. Because if you even think about it, Luke Shaw plays in centre-back before him, right? Johnny Evans is there now. I suspect that Johnny Evans, it's more than just this pre-season short term. I reckon Johnny Evans is going to stay and is going to be our option of a backup centre back. And I think Harry Maguire is behind him in the pecking order. So Harry doesn't really have a future at United. And if he had any pride or any integrity, he would see that the game is up at United and leave the club. For his own sake, he's got a few more years left. Still gets picked for England, you know. But the problem is who's gonna take him? And on top of that, he's got huge wages. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Harry Maguire. But there is a couple of outgoings anyway. But we need to build up that kitty and help the manager. But it's absolutely disgraceful. We shouldn't even be in this position. This takeover should have been done 7 months ago, right? And it's not. But they'll eventually go. They'll get their 6 billion. Because none of the offers have offered them 6 billion. This is why we're still here. I think fans need to actually wise up here. You know, fans are talking about Sheikh Jazim, how great he is and all of this. And I did say earlier on when I first started, why should Sheikh Jazim pay 6 billion to those greedy bastards? But, you know, that's the only way you're going to get rid of them. So if Sheikh Jazim is really serious about buying Manchester United, well then, you've given 5 points something, whatever it is. Just give the 6 billion or just give over 6 billion to get these parasites out if you really want Manchester United. So Jim apparently is saying as well that he's staying in the process. I don't know what you're staying in the process for. You're a waster, right? Your offer is a waste of space. Also, the club that you own in France, you've run that poorly, and you're trying to convince fans that you're going to come in, you're going to do it right with Manchester United. And also, you're the man that said that the Glazers were great people. None of these bids, can I make it clear though, I'm not in favour of Qatari bid either. Just as I'm not in favour of the Sir Jim bid. But they're the two bids on the table, right? So they're the two bids on the table, and one of those two bids is the bid that's got whoever decides. One of them has to break, right? But I can tell you now, even though I'd hate it with me heart for Qatar to take over, I would rather Sheikh Jazim take over because he wants to buy the club outright and clear the debt. So Jim wants to keep those parasites there. And it's an awful situation. But you know what? I have every faith in our manager. Even though he is getting his hands tied behind his back like others before him, I think this manager is smart. And I think he does have a list of players. I reckon he had, like what Jose had, his first choice number ones, and then down the list then, if he can't get his number one choices, an alternative list. And seriously, this manager is buying smart. And this is what will keep us going until we get these parasites out. He'll work clever in the transfer window. Now, he hasn't gotten it right all the time because Weghorst should never have been brought in, but he needed to bring in a striker, and that was the one that was available. But he has a bit more time now to look around the market and choose the players he wants. But we got Henry in the chat, and he says, I always felt the club takeover wasn't going to happen anytime soon. At the earliest, I would say if it happened at the end of the year, but I'm still doubtful that they're going to sell at all. I would have to actually agree with you there. I had a theory when I first started doing videos on this channel. My theory was they'd wait until the end of the transfer window, then announce the sale as a final FU to fans for pushing them out. But you know what? I wouldn't disagree with you, Henry, there. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't sell at all and they hang out to see if other bidders come in. Because think about it, we're playing Champions League football now, right? So if we do well in the Champions League, then the stock value is going to go up. And at the end of the day, these parasites are only concerned with making money. They want their 6 billion, right? If Sheikh Jassim tomorrow gave them their 6 billion, gave them a little over 6 billion, get out of the bleeding club, done. Right? Because remember, the 92 Foundation and all registered itself in the UK and all of that. You had Bloomberg, you had Reuters come out and actually say that Sheikh Jassim was going to take over Manchester United, and then all of a sudden it went completely quiet. I remember you had Rio Ferdinand and all of these so-called journalists, even the tier 1 journalists, have been made look foolish either by they definitely been made look foolish by the Glazers, because all we're hearing is that some members of the family have cold feet and are dragging their feet, and apparently it's Joel, he's the main obstacle of it all, right? The rest want to sell, but Joel is the one that's sticking in. Or maybe as well, we've talked about that some of the shareholders are not happy. For all we know, this delay is happening because these shareholders have decided to sue. I mean, it's a horrible. Look at, they announced it in November. It should have been done by at least January. You could give them a little bit of time because of the Christmas period and all of that bollocks, right? But in January, it should have been done. The takeover should have been done, over and done with. And we should be sitting here with a new owner and going into the transfer window like a bleeding boss, right? And hijacking deals like we used to in the old days and buying the players that we want and saying, we want you to come to Manchester United because you will make us better. And by the way, this is who else we have planned on getting in as well to join this revolution. Bang, all signed on the dotted line. But look, I trust Ten Hag. The only reason why I haven't completely gone crazy, or I'm not all doom and gloom and I'm still looking forward to the season, is that I know we've got a great manager in place. And now with Bruno as his captain, a player that never misses a bloody game, that understands what Erik Ten Hag wants, I believe that we have the makings of something great here. Onana in goal. You have Bruno in the middle with Casemiro, right? Mason Mount there, and then you can switch it around with different players, right? And then you get a top quality striker in there. That core all of a sudden looks completely different and looks a lot more secure. Now, I would really like us to bring in a striker and 2 more midfielders. We do in reality need 2 strikers, 2 midfielders, and we need another centre-back if we get rid of Harry Maguire. But we're not going to get all of them. So I'd make do with a striker and 2 midfielders, because you can put, even though fans won't like it, you can put Rashford through the middle. If Mason Greenwood does stay, which I suspect from Erik Ten Hag's comments, look, I hate to say it, some fans want them to stay, some fans want Mason Greenwood gone. But if I'm taken from what I heard from Erik Ten Hag's press conference, I get the gut feeling he wants Mason Greenwood to stay at the club. He said it is the club decision. He has given his thoughts and feelings on it, but it's the club's decision. And I think that's why we're only in for 1 striker, because I think he honestly believes Mason Greenwood's going to be here. And then again, that's another option for him. Whether Man United fans agree with him being in a red jersey again, the manager will be looking at this from football point of view. And from a football point of view, Mason Greenwood offers you something different. And let's be honest, before he was in the papers and making an idiot of himself, he was actually one of the best players that we actually had on the pitch. You gave him the ball anywhere near that box, and there was a chance that was going in the back of the net. And I think Erik Ten Hag understands that, knows that, and I think secretly he wants him to stay. So I think that's the only reason why we're only in for 1 striker. And remember, mate, like Rashford, Mason Greenwood as well can also play in multiple positions. Remember, this is a manager that likes players that could play in multiple positions, and he's another one. Whether you agree with it or not, but from a footballing point of view, I have a gut feeling Ten Hag wants to keep him. I think personally, just from a fan base point of view and the publicity that it'd bring, I think it could derail what Ten Hag is doing. And I know that, listen, we have to address it. We've got women in this fandom that don't want him to play for United anymore. And you can't blame them. It's a fucking sad situation, because the guy had the world at his feet. He's a fucking talented player, and I don't know what went on, but we all saw what we saw. We all heard what we heard. And, even though the police are not doing anything about it, it doesn't change the fact that was out in public. And see, that's the difference with this. The fact that it is so public, and a lot of people are not going to let it go. And you can be guaranteed, right? A journalist asked about Mason Greenwood today. As the preseason goes on and it gets closer to the start of the season, the manager is going to be asked more questions about Mason Greenwood. So a decision is going to be made either way in the next couple of weeks, in my opinion. You cannot. It's dragged out again, though. For me personally, this is dragged out too long. I mean, what the fuck he is all doing in the boardroom? Who's making these decisions? Like, what he's doing? He's coming in every day and twiddling his thumbs or something. Like, what's the situation? Like, should he not be the first topic of agenda every day until he's come to a decision and then deal with it? Like, why has it dragged out this long? Just like our transfers and everything else drags out. The fact that Mason Greenwood's girlfriend ruined her own prosecution process by meeting up with him and is now having a baby with him just shows the whole thing is a mess. It is a mess. It's an absolute shit show. If she can forgive him, what's stopping us from doing the same? Well, his girlfriend mightn't have any self-respect for herself and may allow herself to be treated like that. But I don't think you could tell women in this fandom to forgive Mason Greenwood. And there's certainly men out in the fandom, and there's some fan channels that I support, and I've heard their opinion on it. And they're saying, the best thing for Mason Greenwood is to just leave the club. It would save a lot of hassle. It would also save a lot of hurt. Because a lot of the female fans would be, and apparently, don't know how true it is, but apparently if Mason Greenwood's introduced, the women's football team will have an issue with that, apparently. So, the whole situation, even behind the scenes, is going to be absolutely all over the place. But I do have a funny feeling that the manager wants to keep him. And I don't know how that's going to go down with the fans. But I do know with female fans, it's not going to go down well. And, it's a sport for everybody. Let's remember that. And I don't want to be here preaching and all that because I'm not into all of that. But it is. We do have female fans in the fandom, and we have to think of them as well, But we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, people will have their opinions on it. I'm not going to sit here on a video and start criticizing people if they want them to stay. It's not my place. But fans will let Mason Greenwood know what they think of him anyway. And then you've got the whole thing about away games in the Premier League as well. He's going to be at the mercy of away crowds if he plays as well. And will he be able to handle that pressure? And, obviously he's cracked before. And if he cracks again, will he do something stupid again? Yeah, I'm in the same camp as you. I wanted his contract ripped up. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. Apparently, the audio as well that we've heard is only a small segment of a whole, apparently a 11-minute conversation. And we've only heard bits. But apparently there's other stuff in it that's quite startling that doesn't put her in a very good light. But again, I haven't heard the audio, so it's just pure speculation. But this whole thing is a mess. There's something definitely going on. It's weird. It actually is. I just don't know what to say. Look, I'll be glad when the club makes its decision. Then we know where we stand. And then fans can react then to it and see where we go from there. But as I said, it should have been wrapped up months ago. Just like this takeover and everything else that we do on slow-mo mode. But that's it, really. So, yeah, interesting press conference. Interesting comments from Ten Hag. He did say, as I said, that David De Gea deserved a proper send-off if it was up to him, which I found very interesting. As I said, he was asked about Mason Greenwood. He was asked about the captaincy. Harry Maguire, interesting comments there saying that taking the captaincy off Harry Maguire, he thought that would benefit him. And then he was asked how it would benefit him. And he says, well, as a centre-back, you have to coordinate. You have to, be vocal, make decisions. So I think he was basically saying the captaincy was a bit of a distraction. And now Harry can just concentrate on his defensive side of the game. Obviously, he spoke about Onana and the transition. He said he could play a low block, a high block. He believed he could adapt to the Premier League. And, would he change the way he played? Because now he was in the Premier League and he talked about his mentality. And Erik Ten Hag said that they achieved amazing things together. And, he wants to bring personalities into the club. He brought that word up again, personalities. And he was also asked about Kobe and other youth players, saying that Kobe earned his chance. And I do believe that during certain games, especially against Wrexham, I think a lot of the youth players will get their goal. They have featured heavily in the first two games, but I think tonight we will see a stronger side against Arsenal. Because as I said, he was asked about these games of how seriously. I think it's actually a stupid question for a journalist anyway to ask how serious you take a pre-season, especially if you're Manchester United. We take pre-season seriously. He said, there's no friendly games, and even though this is a pre-season game against Arsenal, this ain't no friendly. We don't do friendlies with Arsenal. So I'm G'd up for this game, and I will be live at 9:30. We will be starting streaming live at 9:30. We will be here for Arsenal versus Manchester United. They seem to be the home team for this game, the first game of the US tour. So come and join me for that 9:30. Hopefully, we should have the team news. Who's going to be playing in the starting 11? The substitutes bench. Will Onana feature, or is it too soon for Onana to feature? We will see. But come and join me for that. 9:30 we kick off at. And if you haven't subscribed already, we've got 4 people watching. As I said, we're only starting our journey here. I set this channel up ages ago, but I never really uploaded anything to it. But we decided this season that we were going to, speak about Manchester United, because I'm very passionate about the club, about what happens. And, I felt like I needed to get out there and get my opinions out there, and obviously hear from you guys as well, and let me know your opinions and match reactions. We will be doing all of that stuff as well. So come and join me for that. So yeah, very interesting press conference. Great game on tonight. Come and join me. It's gonna be interesting to see how we line up, and if Onana does come into the squad tonight, we will see how much of a defensive high block, see how far up the pitch we actually will be, because we've seen signs of that during the first 2 games, more so against Leeds than we did against Lyon. But Lyon was a little bit tougher, even though they're all over the place. It was tougher than Leeds. But two good matches, 2 good starts, and hopefully now we can make it 3 wins out of 3. But the first game of the US tour. So yeah, as I said, join me at 9:30, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back if he does another press conference. Obviously, I don't know if he does press conference for each game, because it's the first time we're actually covering pre-season on the channel. So we will do the press conferences as they come along, and I'll give you my opinion on them, what the manager had to say. And then, of course, then we will do the match as well, and we will be here for the whole season. So thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share as well. And if you're part of any Manchester United groups or anything out there, let them know about the channel, guys. If you like what I've had to say, get us a bit more exposure, get us out there, and let's build this community together. Yeah. I'll talk to you very soon. Have a good one, folks. And as I said, we will see you soon.